Imagine getting fined $1,000 just for building a wheelchair ramp for your disabled son. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what happened to me. What the HOA didn't know was who my brother was, and what he'd do next would shake the entire neighborhood. This isn't just a story about injustice. It's about standing up, exposing corruption, and fighting back harder than they ever expected. You won't believe how it ends. The fine, the fight, and the first signs of injustice. It started with something simple. Too simple, really. A letter from the HOA tucked in my mailbox, its font rigid and cold. Violation notice. Unapproved structural addition. Fine, $1,000. Deadline to remove, 14 days. That structural addition was a wooden ramp we built for my 10-year-old son, Ethan, who uses a wheelchair due to a rare genetic disorder. We'd built it ourselves over the weekend. Nothing fancy, just a solid, gently sloping path so Ethan could get in and out of the house without me having to carry him every time. I remember standing in front of the mailbox, rereading the letter again and again as Ethan waited in the car. My hands were trembling. I felt heat rushing to my face. I didn't care about the fine. Okay, I did, but not as much as what the letter meant. They were trying to erase Ethan's existence from our neighborhood. When I confronted the HOA president, a woman named Barbara Kessler, she was emotionless. "The ramp violates our community aesthetic. It's an eyesore," she said. "It's for my son. He's disabled." "We understand," she said, in a tone that made it clear she didn't. "But rules are rules. You can file for a special exemption. Approval usually takes 60 to 90 days. So what? I carry my son for 3 months while you hold meetings about how ugly his ramp is?" She didn't answer. She just walked away. My wife, Rachel, wanted to go public immediately. Post the letter on Facebook, call the local news, make noise. But I was still naive. I believed this could be solved with logic, compassion, human decency. I wrote an appeal, attached photos of Ethan, a letter from his doctor. I even cited the Americans with Disabilities Act. I hand-delivered the envelope to the HOA office and got a receptionist's signature. I waited. 2 days later, the second letter came. Appeal denied. Fine stands. Failure to remove the ramp will result in further penalties. This time, they delivered it by hand. A security guard taped it to our front door. Ethan asked, "Am I in trouble?" I hugged him and said, "No, buddy. Some people just forgot how to be kind." But I was done being quiet. That night, I called my brother. Jason isn't just any brother. He's a local investigative reporter for Channel 7 News, with a reputation for exposing corruption. He was the one who broke the City Hall embezzlement scandal last year. The one who went undercover to expose the nursing home abuses. When I told him everything, there was a long silence on the line. Then he said, "Send me everything. Photos, letters, the ramp, everything." I did. 3 days later, he showed up with a camera crew. "We're going to do this right," he said, "but we do it my way. We don't shout, we show. We let the audience get angry with us." He interviewed me, Rachel, and even Ethan, though gently and with care. He got B-roll footage of the ramp, of me lifting Ethan before the ramp was built, of Barbara Kessler avoiding questions as she walked to her Lexus. "Did the HOA really fine your family $1,000 for a wheelchair ramp?" he asked her. No comment. She looked directly into the lens. The footage was gold. The segment aired that Friday night at 6 p.m. Within 12 hours, it had gone viral. By Saturday morning, there were protests outside the HOA office. Handwritten signs, "Let Ethan roll," and "Shame on you, Barbara." And then, the donations started coming in. $1, $5, $100, people from across the country. One man wrote, "I'm a veteran. I built my own ramp too. This made me cry." Another said, "My daughter uses a chair. Fight back. We're with you." But something bigger was coming. Something even Jason hadn't expected. Because someone at City Hall had been watching, and they didn't like what they saw. Part 2. Cracks in the Perfect Neighborhood. The next morning, I was already up before the sun. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept replaying the scene of the HOA representative walking off with that smug smirk on her face, as if she had just triumphed over injustice rather than caused it. But today, I wasn't going to react in anger. I had made a decision. After getting my son Ethan ready and helping him settle with his books and his favorite puzzles near the window, I stepped out to walk the neighborhood, not for leisure, but for research. I started noticing little things I had always ignored before. A garden shed that extended a few inches beyond regulation, a neighbor with a fancy gazebo in their yard, another home with modified gutters painted in a color not approved by the HOA palette. All of these were technically against the HOA rules, yet no one had been fined. Why was my son's ramp singled out? I took photos quietly, respectfully, without confronting anyone. I wasn't here to start fights. I was here to build a case. I compiled a folder over the next few days, quietly tracking the infractions that were being overlooked. I made sure my own home, aside from the ramp, was spotless. They wouldn't find a single thing to use against me. That night, I sat down with my younger brother, Daniel, a news reporter for a local network. Daniel had covered everything from house fires to city council scandals. When he heard what had happened with Ethan, his face changed. "They fined you for a wheelchair ramp?" he asked, voice tight. I nodded. "And they claim it violates aesthetics? But look at these photos," I said, flipping through my laptop. "This neighbor's got an illegal patio extension. This one painted her fence purple. This one even has a chicken coop, which is banned by the bylaws. No fines, no letters. But a medical ramp to help my son? That's where they draw the line." Daniel sat back and rubbed his face.
This isn't just petty, this is discrimination.
"Exactly," I said. "And if they think they can intimidate me into removing Ethan's ramp, they're in for a surprise." Daniel leaned forward.
I can pitch this story to my producer, but if we go public, we go all in. No hiding, full names, full footage. Are you ready for that?
I paused. Was I ready for my private struggle to become a public battle? Could I protect Ethan from the attention that would follow? "Yes," I said, finally. "If we don't speak up, they'll keep doing this. To other families. To people without a voice." Daniel's eyes lit up with a familiar fire.
Good. Let's do this.
Over the next week, Daniel started quietly filming interviews with me and other residents who had faced similar harassment. One woman had received fines for her wind chimes. Another man said the HOA tried to ban his service dog because it barked too much during thunderstorms. None of them had spoken up. Until now. At the same time, I filed a formal appeal with the HOA. They scheduled a meeting for 2 weeks later to discuss the matter. I knew what that meant. Another opportunity for them to talk down to me in front of a panel of self-important board members. Daniel had another idea.
We're going to film the meeting,
He said.
Hidden mic, maybe a camera and a pen. Let the world see how they talk to the people they're supposed to serve.
I hesitated. "Is that even legal?"
Public space, public meeting,
He shrugged.
and if they throw us out, even better. That's footage too.
The day of the HOA meeting arrived, and the conference room in the local rec center was packed tighter than usual. Word had gotten out. Other residents were curious, some angry, some amused. A few even seemed nervous, especially when Daniel entered with his press badge. The HOA president, Ms. Sylvia Granger, barely concealed her disdain as she opened the meeting. Her voice was clipped and formal as she called my name. I stood, my hands calm, my voice steady. "My name is Alex Porter," I began. "I'm here because your board fined me $1,000 for installing a wheelchair ramp for my son, a child with a medical condition who cannot access our home without it. I'm asking you to reconsider the fine, not just for me, but because your actions violate basic human decency." Sylvia raised an eyebrow.
Mr. Porter, the ramp was constructed without architectural approval.
"Which is not required for temporary medical structures," I interjected. "According to state code and federal ADA guidelines, reasonable modifications for accessibility cannot be denied by private governing bodies like yours. I have that statute printed here." I handed copies to each board member. The room grew still. A few board members flipped through the pages, looking visibly uncomfortable. Sylvia narrowed her eyes. Even so, we have rules, which you enforce selectively, I said, pulling out my folder of photos. Shall I go through the list of HOA violations by your board members and friends that have gone unnoticed for years? Gasps echoed through the room. Sylvia slammed a gavel down. That's irrelevant to your case. Daniel stood now. Actually, it's very relevant. I'm Daniel Porter from Channel 8 News. We've been documenting this case, and if you don't drop the fine and issue a public apology, your board's double standards will be aired across the city this Sunday night. The silence that followed was explosive. The storm behind the smiles. The room had fallen silent after Daniel's announcement. You could feel the discomfort spread through the board members like a virus. Ms. Sylvia Granger, always poised and confident, suddenly looked like a cornered animal. She stared at Daniel's press badge, then at me, and then at the crowd behind us, neighbors now whispering, murmuring, shifting in their chairs. Mr. Porter, she said at last, this meeting is not a public media event. If your brother is a reporter, he should not be allowed to— He's not here as a reporter, I interrupted calmly. He's here as my family. The same family you tried to punish when you fined us for helping my disabled son live a normal life. I could see board member Mr. Lester, an older man with a twitchy mustache and a history of towing people's cars without warning, lean forward, whispering something to Sylvia. She stiffened, then stood. This meeting is adjourned until further notice, she snapped, and pounded her gavel. The sound echoed like thunder through the room. Wow, Daniel muttered, flipping off his mic. They're running. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't stop, was that we already had the footage, the hypocrisy, the disrespect, the silence in the face of public pressure. We stepped out of the meeting, surrounded by curious neighbors. Some shook my hand, others whispered their own HOA horror stories. One elderly woman named Joyce pulled me aside and said in a trembling voice, "They fined me $500 for hanging my laundry outside because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but I couldn't afford a dryer after my husband died." I looked her in the eye. You're not alone anymore, Joyce. We're done being bullied. The calm before the broadcast. Back at home, Ethan was watching cartoons when I returned. He looked up at me with that familiar, hopeful grin. He couldn't understand most of what was going on, but he knew something had shifted. I knelt beside him and hugged him tightly. "Daddy's not going to let anyone take away your ramp," I whispered. That weekend, Daniel edited the footage with surgical precision. The opening scene showed my front yard, the modest ramp leading up to the door, and Ethan trying to wheel himself inside. Then came clips of the HOA board meeting, cut with statements from other residents, each with their own tale of being silenced, harassed, or fined unfairly. The segment ended with a bold headline, "HOA or Hostile Authority, When Power Goes Too Far." The broadcast aired on Sunday evening during prime time. I watched it with Ethan asleep on my lap and Daniel pacing nervously behind the couch. By the time the credits rolled, our phones were already blowing up, my inbox flooded with messages from strangers, from neighbors, from advocacy groups. One message stood out. "I'm a civil rights attorney. You've got a case. Let's talk." Shifting ground. Monday morning, the HOA office was closed. By Tuesday, a statement appeared on their website. "We are reviewing our policies and will temporarily suspend enforcement of non-essential fines." But the public wasn't satisfied. The story had gained traction. A larger news network picked it up. Then it made it to Twitter, and by Wednesday, #HOA hypocrisy was trending nationwide. People across the country were sharing their own HOA nightmares. Sylvia Granger tried to go on the defensive. She released a video statement, bad lighting, nervous smile, claiming the ramp issue had been a misunderstanding. That's when Daniel dropped the second segment. It included a voicemail Sylvia had left for another board member, one where she said, "We need to crack down on these people before others start thinking they can just build ramps and park trailers wherever they want." It wasn't just about a ramp. It was about control, and everyone saw it now. On Saturday, I hosted a neighborhood gathering in our front yard, a ramp barbecue, we called it. Daniel grilled burgers, neighbors brought dishes. Ethan got a custom-built wheelchair ramp course from a local carpenter who volunteered after seeing the news. People showed up who had never spoken before. Some apologized for not helping sooner. Others came to vent. But for the first time in years, there was a sense of community in our community. Midway through the afternoon, a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a sharply dressed woman in her 40s, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand. She introduced herself as Ms. Carla Martinez, a representative from the State Housing Oversight Committee. She asked to speak with me privately. "We've received multiple complaints about this HOA," she said. "What your brother aired has opened a full review. If even half of it's true, this board could face serious legal action." I nodded. "So what happens now?" She smiled. "Now, we dig. And you keep speaking. People are listening." The fall of the board. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. But when I woke up Monday morning, I felt something different in the air. There were news vans parked outside my house. My inbox had exploded. And on my doorstep, sitting neatly in a plain envelope, was a formal letter from the State Housing Oversight Committee. Inside it read, "Effective immediately, the HOA Board of Meadow Ridge Subdivision is under state investigation and suspended from operational duties until further review." I took a deep breath. It had happened. We'd done it. Not with yelling, not with threats, but with truth, with exposure, with one news report that revealed what they'd tried so hard to hide. The final meeting. Later that week, the State Committee held a public hearing in the town hall. It was packed. Neighbors came in droves. Some brought printed notices of fines they'd kept for years. Others brought photos, documentation, even receipts of unlawful fees and retaliation from the board. Daniel brought his footage, edited down to a sharp 7-minute reel of HOA corruption at its most arrogant. Then came the moment everyone had waited for. Sylvia Granger, once the Iron Queen of Meadow Ridge HOA, walked into the hearing room flanked by 2 attorneys. Gone was her signature red blazer. She looked smaller now, drained. As the footage played, she didn't meet a single eye in the room. The voicemail she left, "We need to crack down on these people before others start thinking they can just build ramps," was played on loudspeakers. There was a collective gasp in the room. Then, silence. Even her lawyers looked uncomfortable. Ethan's moment. As the panel discussed the case, the lead investigator asked me, "Mr. Porter, do you have any final words before we close?" I stood slowly. My heart beat in my ears, but I didn't speak. Instead, I turned to Ethan, sitting quietly in his chair next to Daniel, and gave him a nod. He wheeled himself up to the microphone. "My name is Ethan," he said. "I'm 7. I have spina bifida. That means I can't walk like other kids. My daddy built me a ramp so I could go outside and play, but some people said that was wrong. They made him pay money because I needed help." The room was frozen. Ethan looked up. "But I like my ramp. I love my daddy, and I don't think we did anything bad." He rolled back, and for a moment, no one breathed. Then the room exploded into applause. Consequences. By the end of the hearing, the state announced its findings. Sylvia Granger and 3 other board members were permanently removed from their HOA positions. A new board election would be held, overseen by independent community officials. All unlawful fines from the past 24 months were to be refunded in full. A public apology was ordered and published in the local paper. And the ramp? Declared a protected medical necessity immune from future disputes. Daniel's story didn't just go local anymore. It aired on national news. In a segment titled "Small Ramp, Big Fight," when one family took on their HOA and won. The footage of Ethan speaking at the hearing, it went viral. Millions of views. New beginnings. 3 weeks later, I stood on my porch, watching volunteers from the new HOA help repaint an elderly neighbor's fence. Daniel got a promotion, offered a regular segment on community justice. As for me, I was approached by multiple neighbors urging me to run for the new HOA board. At first, I laughed it off. But then I thought about Joyce, the woman who couldn't dry her laundry, about the family whose dog had been taken, about Ethan. Maybe it was time to lead from within. I accepted. Final scene. The first meeting of the new HOA board took place on a breezy Saturday morning. No suits, no hidden cameras, just folding chairs in the park. I opened with one sentence. The HOA should protect its people, not punish them. Ethan sat in the front row, ramp beside him, smiling. And for the first time in a long time, our neighborhood didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home.